World champion Damarajo Gukesh does not play in Title Tuesday that often, but when he does, this popular weekly Blitz online tournament becomes even more intriguing. I would like to show you a very entertaining game Gukesh played against a very strong American Blitz chess player Andrew TANG, who goes by the nickname Penguin. Gukesh starts with d4. We have d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, Queen's Gambit declined, exchange variation, exchange of the pawns on d5. Gukesh develops the bishop on f4, c6, supporting the pawn on d5 one more time, e3, opening the diagonal for a light square bishop. Penguin develops his bishop to a square f5, and we have knight h4, immediately challenging that bishop on f5. And interesting things start here. The next move by Andrew is not so popular. It's bishop e4. And now white cannot take the bishop on e4 because knight takes e4. The knight on h4 is under attack. More important, there is a absolutely devastating check on a5. Is a threat because white will not be able to block that diagonal, and king would have to go to e2, and the position of white would totally collapse. Therefore, it's not suggested to take the bishop on e4. Instead, Gukesh plays a3, h6, and now the threat is g5, forking the bishop and the knight. Gukesh ignores that completely and plays queen b3, attacking the pawn on b7. That seems like a threat, but Andrew still continues with g5, forking the bishop and the knight. The best way to continue here for white, actually not to lose a piece, and take the knight on b8. Bishop b8, rook takes b8, and just retrieve with the knight to f3. Instead, Gukesh went into complicated variations with the move queen takes b7. And the rook on a8 is under attack. But Andrew presumably knew this opening very well, and he knew that if he sacrifices that rook on a8, his position would actually be better. He takes the bishop instead on f4, sacrifices the rook on a8, and plays queen b6. And it turns out that the queen on a8 by Gukesh is totally out of the game. You cannot really capture it right away for black. But the queen is totally out of moves, and to play the game without your best piece is not really advantageous for white. Engines consider this position with a big advantage for black pieces. Bishop a6. In order to free the queen with the move queen b7. Andrew takes the pawn on e3, castle for Gukesh, and knight d7. The best way to continue for black was actually knight g4, more aggressive move, threatening to capture the knight on h4. Knight d7 makes a lot of sense because it protects the knight on b8, and now the bishop on a6 is under attack. Before this move, you couldn't take the bishop on a6 because queen takes b8 with the check. So knight d7 makes sense. But knight takes e4, pawn takes e4, and knight jumps to a nice square f5, and now it turns out that this position is already better for white. E takes f2, rook takes f2, queen takes a6, and although white is without an exchange, they have one rook against a bishop and a knight. After rook e1, it turns out that the black king is totally not protected in the middle of the board, and black cannot castle because the bishop on e7 would be captured. King goes to d8, moving away from this dangerous file e. Rook takes e4, and bishop f8, because bishop was under attack on the square e7. Gukesh doubles down on the e file with rook e2. King moves away to c7. Gukesh penetrates into black position with rook e8, and queen b5 was a big mistake by black because they got queen takes a7 with the check. Queen b7, obviously Gukesh doesn't exchange the queens. He continues with the attack. Queen a5 check. Queen b6, he doesn't exchange queens again, just moves back to c3. Knight f6, threatening the rook on e8, but Gukesh had queen g3 in mind, and now Black's position totally collapses. After this check, king goes to d7, rook takes b8 because now the rook is protected by the queen from g3, queen a7, and rook takes f8. In this position, Andrew lost on time. He didn't manage to make the next move, but his position is totally lost because after rook takes f8, it will be followed by rook e7 check, king c8, and capturing the queen on a7 with the next move, queen c7 checkmate. Very nice win by Gukesh, and he did great in Title Tuesday. He was tied for the first place with two more players. One of them was Hikaru Nakamura.